بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. طيب, we are in the final lesson of سجود السهو إن شاء الله. قال المصنف رحمه الله: وإن تذكر السجود بعد رفع رأسه من الركعة التي تليها تمادى على صلاته ولم يرجع وألغى ركعة السهو وزاد ركعة في موضعها ثانيا وسجد قبل السلام. So we covered the person who does something such as forgetting sujood. We covered what would happen if he remembers before the next rak'ah. However, if he has gone into ruku' of the next rak'ah, then he can no longer come back and do that sujood. Rather, he must cancel that rak'ah that he just did, and he has to add an additional one for the one he missed after the salam. Now, the rak'ahs that he is still doing, for example, if he misses the first one, the second rak'ah would take the place of the first one, and so on and so forth. The third one would take the place of the second, and the fourth would take the place of the third, and he would add the fourth one after the salam. Now, if he does the second rak'ah in place of the first, that means he would have added things to the salah, such as tashahhud, and that would necessitate sujood after the salam. However, if, for example, he misses the sujood of the second rak'ah and he cancels the second rak'ah and the third one takes its place, then the third rak'ah is now missing sunnah. It's missing, first of all, a jahr, it's missing reading out loud, and it's also missing the tashahhud. So in that case, the sujood would be before the salam. And he explained, al-Akhdari rahimahullah explains it in a slightly complicated way in the text as opposed to other texts. He says, وزاد ركعة في موضعها ثانيا وسجد قبل السلام إن كانت من الأوليين وتذكر بعد عقد الثالثة. He says, if it is from the first two rak'ahs and he remembers after the third rak'ah, then he does it before the salam, and he does it after the salam إن لم تكن من الأوليين أو كانت منهما وتذكر قبل عقد الثالثة. So if it is from the first two rak'ahs and he remembers after the third, he does the sujood after the salam. However, if it is from the first two rak'ahs, so if it's not from the first two rak'ahs, then he does it after the salam, and also after the salam would be if it's not from the first two rak'ahs, but he remembers before the third. So he explains it in a complicated fashion, which would require a little more focus and a little more time to dig in, which we unfortunately do not have. So the reason he gives لأن الصورة والجلوس لم يفوتا. So he says he would do it after the salam in these latter two scenarios because the surah, the second surah in the first two rak'ahs, and the julus would not have been missed. ومن سلم شاكا في كمال صلاته بطلت صلاته. Whoever is in doubt regarding the completeness of his salah and he does salam, then his salah is invalid. So he must either come to certainty that that the prayer is complete, or come to certainty that the prayer is not complete and do what would be necessitated from an extra rak'ah and sujood al-sahw. If he does salam and he's still in doubt, then the salah would be invalid. والسهو في صلاة القضاء كالسهو في صلاة الأداء. So there is no difference in sujood al-sahw based on whether the salah is being performed on time or if it's being done if it's being done after the prayer time and it's being done late. In either case, it will require sujood al-sahw. Similarly, as he says, it is the same a obligatory prayer as it is in a nafila prayer, a recommended prayer. It is the same except in 6 instances. So in qada and ada, on time and after time, they're the same altogether, completely. However, in obligatory prayers and recommended prayers, there is 6 exceptions. They are the same except for six masail. Al-Fatiha, the surah, reading out loud, reading silently, and adding a rak'ah, and forgetting some of the obligatory actions of the prayer if it has this last one only counts if it has been a long time. So he starts to give examples. فمن نسى الفاتحة في النافلة وتذكر بعد الركوع تمادى وسجد قبل السلام بخلاف الفريضة. So the person who forgets the Fatiha in a recommended prayer and he has already gone into ruku', then he continues and he performs sujood before the salam due to missing the Fatiha, as opposed to an obligatory prayer in which he would be forced to go back to the Fatiha and continue from there. بخلاف الفريضة فإنه يلغي تلك الركعة. Sorry. In an obligatory prayer, he would be forced to go back to al-Fatiha if it's before the ruku'. After the ruku', he would be forced to cancel that rak'ah, as we have explained moments ago. And it says here, in obligatory prayer, بخلاف الفريضة فإنه يلغي تلك الركعة. In the obligatory prayer, he would have to cancel that rak'ah and add another one. Whereas in the recommended prayer, as we just said, he continues and he only does sujood al-sahw. He does not have to go back and perform the Fatiha. ويكون سجوده كما ذكرنا في تارك السجود. ومن نسى السورة أو الجهر أو السر في النافلة وتذكر بعد الركوع تمادى ولا سجود عليه. So whoever misses the second surah, or he reads out loud when it's supposed to be silent, or reads silently when it's supposed to be out loud, then he only remembers after the ruku' in a recommended prayer, then he continues and he does not have to do sujood al-sahw, as opposed to the obligatory prayer, which he would do it because he missed a sunnah. ومن قام إلى ثالثة في النافلة فإن تذكر قبل عقد الركوع رجع وسجد بعد السلام وانعقد الثالثة تمادى وزاد الرابعة وسجد قبل السلام. So whoever is praying a nafila and he gets up for a third rak'ah accidentally, if he remembers before the ruku', then he goes back to sitting and he does salam. However, if he does it after the ruku', the third rak'ah, then he continues and he adds a fourth rak'ah. And in both scenarios, whether he remembers before the ruku' or not, in both scenarios he would do sujood ba'di, he would do sujood al-sahw after the salam. ومن نسى ركنا من النافلة كالركوع أو السجود ولم يتذكر حتى سلم وطال فلا إعادة عليه. So whoever misses an obligatory action from the prayer, such as a sujood or a ruku', and he does not remember until he does salam, and it's been a long time, so he's left the masjid or he's done something else, then he doesn't have to repeat, as opposed to the obligatory prayer in which he would have to repeat regardless of when he remembers. ومن قطع النافلة عمدا أو ترك منها ركعة أو سجدة عامدا أعادها أبدا. Whoever purposely leaves out a rak'ah or a sajda from a recommended prayer, or he is in the middle of the recommended prayer and he just stops the prayer and ends it before it actually ends. In these 3 scenarios, he would have to it is obligatory for him to finish the prayer. He would have to repeat that prayer regardless of the timing. So even if 1 year, 2 year passes, he would still have to repeat that prayer. ومن تنهد في صلاة فلا شيء عليه إلا أن ينطق بحروف. Whoever sighs in the middle of the prayer, then there is nothing upon him except that letters come out, as we have discussed in yawning and coughing, etc. Sighing would not necessitate anything from sujood al-sahw or repetition, except that letters would come out. In that case, it would count as speaking. وإذا سهى الإمام بنقص أو زيادة سبح به المأموم، وإذا قام إمامك من ركعتين فسبح به، فإن فارق الأرض فاتبعه، وإن جلس في الأولى أو في الثالثة فقم ولا تجلس معه. So if you are praying behind an imam and the imam does a mistake, regardless of whether it is a addition or a subtraction, then you have to say Subhanallah so that the imam remembers. Now, if you are in the second rak'ah and the imam gets up without doing the tashahhud, then you would have to say Subhanallah. If he leaves the ground, uh, if he leaves the ground regardless of you saying Subhanallah, then you follow him. However, وإن جلس في الأولى أو في الثالثة فقم ولا تجلس معه. If the imam sits to do tashahhud in the first rak'ah or the third rak'ah, then you are not allowed to sit with him and you stay standing and you wait for him. Now the difference is, so to revise, if he gets up and stands without doing tashahhud in the second rak'ah, then you say Subhanallah and you stand with him. However, if he sits in tashahhud without it being the time for tashahhud, then you cannot sit with him. You stand and you wait for him to catch up to you. And the reason is that uh, um, when he is sitting, he will catch up to you. If the imam has sat accidentally, then after that sitting, he will stand and he will eventually catch up to the correct place in prayer. However, if the imam stands while you're supposed to be in tashahhud, then you have to follow him. Because if you do not follow him, then the imam will not catch up to you. Because after that, standing, he will go into ruku' and then sujood, and you will still be in your place. He will not catch up to you because he has skipped a step, rather than adding a step before the time. Like, what happens if he gets up after doing one sajda instead of two? وإن سجد واحدة وترك الثانية فسبح به ولا تقم معه إلا أن تخاف عقب ركوعه فاتبعه ولا تجلس بعد ذلك معه لا في ثانية ولا في رابعة فإذا سلم فزد ركعة أخرى. So if he gets up after one sajda, then you say Subhanallah as you do to correct him and for him to come back. What al-Akhdari here does not mention is that if he does not come back after the Subhanallah, then you are allowed to speak to him. You're allowed to tell him, come back for the second sajda. Now, you're not allowed to stand with him. According to what it says here, you're not allowed to stand with him, except that you fear he may um, you fear he may go into the next ruku', in which case you would follow him. This is different than the dominant position in the madhab. The dominant position is that if the imam does not come back to do the second sajda, then you do the second sajda on your own, and then you stand and follow him. And if he later on remembers the second sajda and he goes back to do it, then you do not go back with him. Like, and he says here, according to al-Akhdari's view, if you do follow him, then you would have to add a rak'ah after the salam, because that rak'ah would be cancelled, because the rak'ah with only one sajda is a rak'ah that is cancelled. So according to the view narrated here, after the salam, you would have to add that rak'ah, and it is recommended that one of the congregation takes the place of the imam, and they do the extra they do the extra rak'ah as a congregation rather than each one on their own. فإن كنتم جماعة فالأفضل لكم أن تقدموا واحدا يتم بكم, as we have just said. وإذا زاد الإمام سجدة ثالثة. So someone's asking that the Imam has to do sahw. Yes, the Imam has to do sahw if he remembers. Um, in the dominant view, according to the dominant view, you would um, do salam with the Imam because you have done the sajda on your own. So he says, وإذا زاد الإمام سجدة ثالثة. If the Imam does 3 sajdas by accident, then you say Subhanallah, and you do not prostrate the third one with him, even if he doesn't. وإذا قام الإمام إلى خامسة تبعه من تيقن موجبها أو شك فيه وجلس من تيقن زيادتها. If the Imam gets up for an extra rak'ah, so if it's a 4 rak'ah prayer, he gets up for a 5th. If you are certain that this extra rak'ah is not part of the salah, it should not be part of the salah, then you do not go up with him and you stay where you are and you wait for the salam. If you are certain that the extra rak'ah is necessary, or you are in doubt, then you have to follow him. So the person who is certain that the 5th rak'ah is incorrect, then he has to say sitting, and if he stands with the Imam, his prayer is invalidated. Whereas the other person who is not certain that the extra rak'ah is incorrect, whether he's in doubt or he's certain that the 5th rak'ah is necessary, then it's obligatory for him to stand with the Imam, and if he sits, then his prayer is invalidated. So the opposite of the first person. فإن جلس الأول وقام الثاني بطلت صلاته. So if the first person stands and the second person sits, if the first person sits and the second person stands, the salah is invalidated, as we have said. وإذا سلم الإمام قبل كمال الصلاة سبح به من خلفه فإن صدقه كمل صلاته وسجد بعد السلام. If the Imam does salam before the salah is complete, then the person should do tasbih. So if the Imam listens to him, then they complete the prayer together and they do sujood after the salam. وإن شك في خبره سأل عدلين وجاز لهما الكلام في ذلك وإن تيقن الكمال عمل على يقينه. So if the Imam hears someone say Subhanallah and he's not sure whether the prayer is complete or it's not, he is allowed to ask 2 upright people from the congregation regarding whether the salah is complete or not, and those 2 people are allowed to respond to him with words to use as an evidence for him to go back and complete the salah. وإن تيقن الكمال عمل على يقينه وترك العدلين إلا أن يكثر الناس خلفه فيترك يقينه ويرجع إليه. So if the Imam is certain, so if someone said Subhanallah that the prayer is not complete, if the Imam is certain that his prayer is correct, then he does not go back and he leaves them to finish the prayer on their own. However, if there is a lot of people in the congregation, then he goes back and prays with them, even if he is certain that he is correct. And this is due to the fact that if the congregation is very large, there could be utter chaos because most people will not understand the rulings of Salah and they will not know what to do. And therefore, it's the less of 2 evils that he leaves his certainty and finishes his prayer. Despite the fact that half of it, almost 1/3 of this text was sujood as-sahw, there is still a lot that needs to be discussed in sujood as-sahw. Inshallah, we will get to it in the near future. As for this text, alhamdulillah, we have completed this text in, I think this is the 22nd lesson. As some people have asked me in private and I have answered, inshallah, the next text will be al-Muqaddimah al-Izziyya, in which we will discuss more in depth regarding the acts of worship we have already discussed and other acts of worship, and um, an introduction to uh, other chapters such as commerce and marriage, etc. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As always, questions are welcome either in the group chat or to me personally. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.